Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back into the dusty, desperate world of the American frontier, where you're clutching a crumpled train ticket and watching tumbleweeds dance past saloon doors that swing like broken promises. You can already taste the grit between your teeth, feel the weight of your few possessions in a battered carpet bag, and hear the distant piano music drifting from establishments where respectable ladies never set foot. The air smells of horse manure, tobacco smoke, and something else. Opportunity mixed with danger, hope seasoned with desperation. You probably won't survive this journey with your innocence intact, but then again, innocence doesn't put food on the table or a roof over your head in 1880s America. If you're into this kind of soft-spoken time travel, tap like and hit subscribe. It's free and you're never stuck with it. Drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I love hearing how you're all doing out there in the modern world. Now, settle in, take a deep breath, and let the weight of today's worries fade away as we slip back through time to a world where survival meant making impossible choices with grace and grit. You step off the dusty train onto the wooden platform of Deadwood, South Dakota, and immediately understand why they call these places the middle of nowhere. The locomotive hisses and clanks behind you like a mechanical dragon, belching steam that mingles with the perpetual dust cloud hanging over this makeshift town. Your boots, the only decent pair you own, crunch on the rough planks as you clutch your carpet bag tighter and survey your new reality. The year is 1882, and you've just made the same journey thousands of other women have made before you, fleeing something terrible back east and hoping the frontier offers second chances. Maybe you're running from an abusive husband who drinks away the grocery money, or perhaps your family disowned you for some scandal that wouldn't even raise eyebrows today. Whatever brought you here, you're now standing in a town where the male-to-female ratio is roughly 20-1, and respectable employment for women basically amounts to teaching school, taking in laundry, or marrying quickly. But here's the thing about frontier towns that Hollywood never quite captures. They're not just lawless, they're completely improvised. Everyone's making up the rules as they go along, from the sheriff to the shopkeepers to the women who've learned to monetize the one thing this testosterone-heavy boomtown desperately craves: female companionship, and you're about to become part of that economy, whether you planned it or not. You make your way down the main street, dodging horse-drawn wagons and trying not to stare at the rough-looking men who definitely stare at you. The buildings look like a strong wind could knock them over, which, frankly, it probably could. Nothing here is built to last because nobody expects to stay. This is a get-rich-quick town where fortunes are made and lost faster than you can say gold strike. And everyone knows the party won't last forever. The smell hits you first, a mixture of unwashed bodies, stale beer, tobacco, and something distinctly feminine wafting from the painted windows above the saloons. Those windows belong to the sporting houses, and despite what romantic westerns suggest, they're not filled with glamorous fallen angels with hearts of gold. They're filled with women just like you, broke, desperate, and rapidly running out of options. A woman in a faded blue dress approaches you, her smile warm, but her eyes calculating. She introduces herself as Belle, and she seems to know exactly why you're here before you do. "First time in Deadwood, honey?" she asks, and when you nod, she chuckles. "Thought so. You've got that fresh off the rails look. Come on, let me buy you a drink and we'll talk." You follow Belle into the Gem Theater, though theater is a generous term for what's essentially a saloon with pretensions. The place is dimly lit by oil lamps that cast dancing shadows on the walls, and the air is thick with cigar smoke and the sound of men's laughter. Historians still argue whether places like the Gem were primarily entertainment venues that happened to offer prostitution, or brothels that happened to have entertainment, but from where you're sitting, the distinction seems academic. Belle orders you a whiskey. Apparently, ladies don't drink wine in Deadwood, and starts explaining the facts of frontier life. "See, out here, there's 3 kinds of women," she says, counting on her fingers. "There's the wives, who are scarcer than hen's teeth and treated like precious china. There's the working girls like us, who everybody needs but nobody respects. And there's the dance hall girls, who are basically working girls who haven't admitted it yet." You're starting to realize that your romantic notions about frontier independence are about to get a harsh reality check. This isn't about pioneer spirit or manifest destiny. This is about supply and demand, and you're about to become part of the supply chain. Belle explains that most of the houses are run by madams who've worked their way up from the bottom, and they're not the motherly figures you might expect. These are businesswomen running complex operations that have to navigate corrupt sheriffs, violent customers, rival establishments, and the constant threat of disease or pregnancy in an era when medical care basically consists of whiskey and prayer. The thing is, Belle continues, lowering her voice, you've got to understand the hierarchy. There's the parlor houses for the rich mining bosses and cattle kings. They've got real furniture, clean sheets, and girls who can actually read. Then there's places like this for the regular working stiffs, and then there's the cribs down by the railroad tracks, where... She trails off, but you get the picture. You learn that the economics are surprisingly complex. It's not just about the obvious transaction. There's a whole ecosystem of payments, percentages, and fees. You'll owe the house for your room, your meals, your clothes, your medical care, such as it is, and even the soap you use. Many girls find themselves trapped in a cycle of debt that makes leaving nearly impossible, especially since most banks won't deal with soiled doves, and respectable society won't hire them for legitimate work. Belle introduces you to Madame Dora Dufresne, a woman whose reputation precedes her by about 6 counties. Dora runs one of the more upscale establishments, and she has the bearing of someone who survived everything the frontier could throw at her and came out swinging. She looks you up and down with the practiced eye of someone evaluating livestock, but there's something almost maternal in her demeanor. First rule, Dora says without preamble, is that you work for me, not the other way around. Second rule is that every girl pays her way. I'm not running a charity. Third rule is that what happens upstairs stays upstairs, but what happens in my parlor is everybody's business, and I don't tolerate drama. She explains the daily routine. You'll wake up around noon, spend the afternoon getting ready, work from early evening until the early morning hours, and then count your earnings while figuring out how much you owe the house. Sundays are supposed to be rest days, but in a town where most men work 6 days a week in dangerous conditions, Sunday is often the busiest night. You're assigned a small room on the second floor. It's barely larger than a closet with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a cracked mirror that's seen better decades. The window looks out onto the main street, where you can watch the endless parade of men, horses, and wagons that keep this ramshackle town functioning. It's not the life you imagined when you bought that train ticket, but as Belle pointed out earlier, imagination doesn't pay the bills. The other girls in the house eye you with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. You're new competition, but you're also fresh blood in a business where freshness commands premium prices. There's Mary, who claims she used to be a school teacher in Ohio before her husband died and left her with debts. Sarah, who ran away from a convent, or so she says. And Big Nose Kate, who apparently used to run with some famous outlaw before settling into the more stable income of brothel work. They explain the unwritten rules that Madame Dora didn't mention. Never show weakness to the customers. Always demand payment up front. Keep a derringer hidden, but don't let anyone know you have it. And never, ever fall in love with a client. The minute you start believing their sweet talk, Mary warns, is the minute you stop being a businesswoman and start being a victim. As your first evening approaches, you realize that everything you thought you knew about the Wild West was probably wrong. This isn't a romantic adventure or a feminist liberation story. It's a harsh economic reality where women with limited options make the best choices they can with the cards they've been dealt. Your first morning in Madame Dora's establishment begins at the ungodly hour of noon, when the sound of someone banging pots in the kitchen below jolts you from dreams of home-cooked meals and clean laundry. You stumble to the washstand, splash lukewarm water on your face, and realize that your reflection in that cracked mirror is about to learn some very specific lessons about frontier business practices. Dora calls all the girls downstairs for what she cheerfully terms morning devotions, though the only thing being worshipped here is cold, hard cash. The parlor looks different in daylight, shabbier somehow, with yesterday's cigar ash still scattered on the card tables and the red velvet curtains faded to the color of dried blood. But Dora herself looks exactly the same, sharp-eyed, well-dressed, and radiating the kind of authority that comes from surviving in a business where weakness gets you killed. "Ladies," she announces, settling into her throne-like chair near the piano, "we've got fresh meat to train." She gestures toward you with the casual air of someone discussing livestock. "Everyone gather round while I explain how things work in a civilized establishment. The hierarchy, you learn, is more complex than anything you encountered in whatever respectable society you left behind. At the top sits Dora herself, part businesswoman, part mother hen, part dictator. She handles the money, makes the rules, bribes the right officials, and decides who works when. Cross her, and you'll find yourself working the cribs down by the railroad tracks faster than you can say customer satisfaction. Just below Dora are her senior girls, the veterans who've proven they can handle difficult customers, manage their money, and avoid the kind of drama that brings unwanted attention from law enforcement. These women get the better rooms, the wealthier clients, and first pick of the evening's prospects. They also serve as informal enforcers of house rules, which means they're the ones who'll set you straight if you step out of line. Then there's everyone else, the regular working girls who make up the bulk of the operation. You're starting here, at the bottom of a ladder you're not sure you want to climb. Below you, theoretically, are the girls who work the street corners and dollar-a-trick cribs, but Dora makes it clear that's where rule breakers end up, not where anyone starts voluntarily. Now, about the money, Dora continues, pulling out a ledger that looks thicker than a family Bible. Nothing here is free, girls. Nothing. You want to eat? That's 50 cents a day. You want a room? That's $2 a week. Clean sheets? Extra. Hot water for washing? Extra. The dress you're wearing? You're buying it from me on an installment plan. The mathematics of survival become brutally clear as Dora runs through the numbers. A typical customer might pay anywhere from $2 to $10 for your company, depending on what exactly they're buying and how much cash they're carrying. But out of that, you owe Dora 50% right off the top. That's her cut for providing the location, the protection, and the customers. From your remaining 50%, you subtract room, board, clothing, medical expenses, and something called house fees that seem to multiply like rabbits. Most girls clear about $15 to $20 a week, Dora explains with the casual air of someone discussing the weather, if they're smart about managing their expenses and don't develop expensive habits. She doesn't specify what those expensive habits might be, but the way big-nosed Kate suddenly finds her fingernails fascinating suggests that liquor and laudanum factor heavily into the equation. The survival codes, you discover, are as intricate as anything you might find in an etiquette manual, just with considerably higher stakes for social mistakes. Rule number 1, never discuss a customer with anyone except Dora, and only then if there's a problem that threatens house security. Rule number 2, personal relationships between girls are fine, but the moment personal drama affects business, Dora will solve the problem by removing one or both parties involved. Rule number 3, what happens in your room is your business, but what happens in the parlor downstairs affects everyone's earning potential. Remember, Dora says, fixing each girl with a stare that could freeze whiskey, we're selling a fantasy here. These men work in mines, on cattle drives, in lumber camps, dangerous, dirty, lonely work that ages them fast and kills them young. They come here not just for physical comfort, but for the illusion that someone cares about their day, their troubles, their dreams of striking it rich. This is where Hollywood gets it spectacularly wrong, you realize. The romanticized notion of the whore with a heart of gold who genuinely falls for her clients. That's a luxury no working girl can afford. Caring too much about any individual customer is a recipe for financial and emotional disaster. You're running a business, not a charity for lonely hearts. The daily routine, Dora explains, follows a rhythm as predictable as church services. Afternoons are for preparation, bathing, dressing, arranging your hair, and putting on the kind of makeup that looks natural in lamplight, but probably resembles war paint in daylight. You'll learn to paint your lips redder, darken your eyes more dramatically, and dust your skin with rice powder to achieve that pale, delicate look that frontier men associate with refinement. Evenings begin with what Dora calls parlor time, mingling with customers downstairs, encouraging them to buy drinks, playing cards, listening to their stories, and generally creating the kind of atmosphere that makes them want to spend money. This is where your acting skills matter more than anything else. You need to appear interested in tedious stories about cattle prices and mining claims, laugh at jokes that aren't funny, and make each man feel like he's the most fascinating person you've met all week. Historians still argue whether the entertainment aspect of frontier brothels was genuine or just elaborate foreplay, but from your perspective, it doesn't matter. Whether you're singing along to piano music, dealing poker, or listening to a cowboy explain his theories about horse breeding, you're working. Every smile, every laugh, every seemingly casual touch of a customer's arm is designed to separate him from his hard-earned dollars. The money handling procedures are more sophisticated than you expected. Customers pay up front, no exceptions, no matter how trustworthy they seem or how many sad stories they tell. Payment goes directly to Dora or one of her designated senior girls, who make change and keep track of who owes what to whom. You never handle money directly during business hours, which protects both you and the house from accusations of theft or shortchanging. Trust me, Big Nose Kate mutters during a brief break in Dora's orientation. The minute you start making exceptions to the money rules is the minute you start losing money. These men might be charming as all get out when they're trying to get upstairs, but they can turn mean as rattlesnakes when it comes time to pay. Personal safety protocols, you learn, are built into every aspect of the operation. Your room has 2 exits, the main door and a window that opens onto a back stairway. You keep a small bell next to your bed that connects to a wire running down to Dora's office. If you ring it, help arrives quickly and armed. You never drink alcohol with customers, no matter how much they offer to pay for the privilege of getting you drunk. And you never, under any circumstances, accompany a customer outside the building without Dora's explicit permission and advance payment. The clothing requirements are specific and expensive. During parlor hours, you wear your best dress, something colorful and fashionable that shows you're successful, but not so fancy that it makes working men feel inadequate. For upstairs work, you change into simpler garments that are easier to remove and clean. Everything gets washed and pressed regularly, which means you're constantly buying soap, starch, and replacement clothing as things wear out. Medical care, such as it exists, operates on a don't ask, don't tell basis that would terrify any modern healthcare provider. There's a doctor in town who's friendly to working girls, meaning he asks fewer questions and doesn't sermonize about moral choices. But his idea of preventive medicine involves mercury treatments that might be worse than whatever they're supposed to cure, and his surgical skills are best described as enthusiastic rather than competent. The trick, Sarah explains while demonstrating proper corset lacing technique, is to stay healthy by being careful, not by relying on doctors to fix things after they go wrong. This means learning to identify problematic customers before problems develop, understanding the early warning signs of various diseases, and maintaining the kind of personal hygiene that's challenging when hot water costs extra and privacy is a luxury. The social dynamics between the girls operate like a complex ecosystem where cooperation and competition exist simultaneously. You're all competing for the same customers and the same earning opportunities, but you also depend on each other for safety, information, and emotional support. New girls get haze, veterans get respect, and everyone understands that today's competitor might be tomorrow's lifesaver when a customer turns violent. As your first afternoon of official training winds down, you realize that nothing about this life resembles the desperate romanticism of dime novels or the moral simplicity of church sermons. This is a business built on supply and demand, managed by women who've learned to navigate a legal gray area while providing services that society simultaneously condemns and consumes. You're not a victim or a villain. You're an entrepreneur in an industry that operates by its own rules, and your success depends entirely on how quickly you learn to play by them. The rooster that some optimist brought to Deadwood starts crowing at 5 in the morning, but you've learned to ignore it because your workday doesn't begin until the sun is high enough to make the saloon windows glow like amber. You roll over in your narrow bed, feeling every spring through the thin mattress, and remind yourself that sleeping until noon is one of the few perks of a job that keeps you awake until the early hours serving whiskey-soaked cowboys and silver-struck miners. Your real day begins when you hear the familiar clatter of Big Nose Kate's boots on the wooden floor above. She's always first up, claiming that early birds catch the best-paying worms, though you suspect she just can't sleep through her own snoring. You stretch, feeling your corset stays dig into your ribs, even though you loosened the laces before collapsing into bed 6 hours ago, and prepare to begin the elaborate ritual of transforming yourself from exhausted woman into profitable fantasy. The first challenge is water, specifically getting enough of it hot enough to matter without spending your entire day's potential earnings on the luxury. Remember those 50-cent daily meal charges Dora mentioned? Well, hot water for washing costs extra, and if you want privacy while you bathe, that's another nickel on top. Most mornings you make do with whatever lukewarm water you can manage from the pitcher and basin in your room. saving the hot baths for days when you can afford them or when a customer has been particularly generous. You start with your face, scrubbing away yesterday's rice powder and rouge with soap that smells like lie and false promises. The mirror doesn't lie about what 12-hour workdays are doing to your complexion, but that's what makeup is for. Foundation in the 1880s consists of a mixture of rice powder, cornstarch, and whatever tinting agents you can afford. Some girls swear by crushed berries, others use brick dust for a rosier glow, and the truly desperate resort to lead-based cosmetics that create a perfect complexion right up until they slowly poison you to death. Your corset presents the daily engineering challenge that modern women can barely imagine. This isn't the cute, decorative undergarment you see in costume dramas. This is a medieval torture device designed to reshape your entire torso into an hourglass that defies both gravity and human anatomy. The steel stays dig into your ribs. The laces require the strength of a longshoreman to tighten properly, and once it's on, you're committed to shallow breathing for the next 12 hours. But here's the thing about corsets that fashion historians love to debate. They weren't just about creating an impossible silhouette. In your line of work, a properly fitted corset provides crucial support for the kind of physical demands that come with entertaining men who've been living on beans and hardtack for months. It also creates a barrier between you and grabby customers, and the rigid structure can actually help prevent certain types of injuries during encounters that turn rougher than anticipated. The stockings come next. Silk if you've had a good week, cotton if you haven't, and carefully darned wool if you're having the kind of month where every penny counts toward keeping your room. You've learned to check for runs and holes every morning because there's nothing that destroys the illusion of feminine delicacy quite like laddered stockings, and replacing them costs more than most miners make in a day. Your dress selection depends on a complex calculation involving the day of the week, your financial situation, the weather, and your best guess about what kind of customers might wander through doors' front door. Saturdays call for your finest gown, the blue silk that makes your eyes look deeper and your waist look smaller. Weekday afternoons might warrant something simpler but still attractive, while late-night hours often mean changing into something that's easier to get out of quickly and won't show stains. The hair arrangement alone takes an hour on a good day, longer if humidity has turned your tresses into something resembling a tumbleweed. You've mastered the art of creating elaborate updos using pins, combs, and enough pomade to lubricate a wagon wheel. The goal is to look effortlessly elegant while ensuring that your hair won't collapse into chaos during moments of vigorous activity. Some girls add false pieces for extra volume, though you've learned to be cautious about hair pieces after watching Sarah's entire coiffure slide sideways during an unfortunate encounter with an overly enthusiastic cattle baron. Makeup application in lamplight requires skills that would impress a theater professional. You darken your lashes with burned cork, redden your lips with a mixture of beeswax and rouge, and use rice powder to create the pale, delicate complexion that suggests you spend your days embroidering rather than entertaining rough men. The trick is achieving a look that appears natural in the dim lighting of the parlor, while still being dramatic enough to catch attention across a smoky room. Historians still argue whether frontier prostitutes actually wore the elaborate makeup depicted in later Hollywood westerns, but from your daily experience, you can confirm that subtlety doesn't pay the bills. Men who've been staring at nothing but cattle and sagebrush for weeks respond to bold colors, dramatic contrasts, and the kind of feminine artifice that signals availability without appearing desperate. By 3 o'clock, you're fully assembled and ready to make your entrance into the parlor, where the afternoon's business has already begun. The room smells of tobacco, leather, and that particular mixture of hope and desperation that follows men who work dangerous jobs for uncertain pay. Some of your regular customers are already settled at their favorite tables, nursing whiskey and pretending to play cards while really just waiting for their preferred girl to appear. The waiting game begins immediately. You circulate through the room, perching on chair arms, laughing at stories you've heard dozens of times, and creating the impression that you genuinely enjoy discussing the relative merits of different mining techniques. Your goal is to make each man feel special, while simultaneously evaluating his financial potential and sobriety level. A drunk customer might pay more, but he's also more likely to cause problems that require Dora's intervention. You learn to read the subtle signals that indicate a man's ready to make a purchase. The way he shifts in his chair when you laugh at his jokes, how his hand moves toward his pocket when you compliment his shirt, the particular quality of attention he pays when you lean close to hear his stories over the piano music. These are the moments when casual conversation transforms into business negotiation, though neither party acknowledges the transition explicitly. The rooms upstairs are your real workplace, and they're nothing like the romantic boudoirs depicted in dime novels. Your chamber measures roughly 8 by 10 feet, furnished with a narrow bed, a washstand, a single chair, and whatever personal touches you can afford on your limited budget. The walls are thin enough that you can hear conversations from adjacent rooms, which means everyone else can hear yours as well. Privacy is an illusion maintained through a combination of willful ignorance and background noise from the piano downstairs. The physical demands of your work go far beyond what polite society imagines. You're expected to be an actress, a therapist, a companion, and an entertainer, often simultaneously. Some customers want to talk about their problems. Others prefer to pretend you're genuinely interested in their dreams of striking gold. And a few just want someone to listen while they complain about their wives, their bosses, or their chronic bad luck at cards. The temperature in your room varies wildly depending on the season and time of day. Summer afternoons turn the upstairs into a furnace that makes your corset feel like a personal torture device, while winter nights require creative solutions for staying warm when the building's heating consists of a single stove downstairs. You've learned to keep a fan for hot weather and extra blankets for cold nights, though both represent additional expenses that cut into your earnings. Between customers, you have brief intervals to freshen up, change clothes if necessary, and prepare for the next encounter. This might involve anything from reapplying makeup to completely changing your persona based on what you've learned about the next customer's preferences. The cowboy who likes sweet, innocent girls requires a different approach than the mining supervisor who prefers confident, experienced women. The physical toll accumulates throughout the evening in ways that romantic depictions of frontier life conveniently ignore. Your feet ache from standing in heeled boots on wooden floors, your back protests the constant corseting, and your face hurts from maintaining a cheerful expression for hours at a time. By midnight, you're running on determination and whatever energy you can derive from the small meals you grab between customers. The late night hours bring different challenges as alcohol takes its toll on customer behavior. Men who were charming and respectful at 8 o'clock can become demanding, rough, or downright dangerous by midnight. You develop an instinct for recognizing when a situation is deteriorating and how to either diffuse tensions or summon help before things escalate beyond your control. Some nights, you entertain a steady stream of customers who come and go with business-like efficiency. Other evenings, you might spend hours with a single client who's paid for extended companionship and wants to talk more than anything else. Both scenarios present their own challenges. The first is physically exhausting, while the second requires emotional stamina that can be even more draining. The cleanup routine after each customer becomes as automatic as breathing. Fresh water, clean towels, a quick inspection to ensure nothing is missing or broken, and preparation for whoever comes next. You maintain a mental ledger of your earnings, expenses, and the running total that determines whether you're having a profitable night or sliding deeper into debt to the house. By the time the last customer stumbles out into the pre-dawn darkness, you're exhausted in ways that go far beyond simple physical tiredness. You've spent 8 hours being whoever each client needed you to be, and now you have to remember who you actually are underneath all the performance and pretense. Tomorrow, or rather later today, you'll do it all again, because in Deadwood, South Dakota, in 1882, this is what survival looks like for a woman with limited options and unlimited determination. The first time you see another girl coughing up blood into her wash basin, you understand that death isn't just a possibility in this business, it's a business partner who never takes a day off. Mary tries to hide the crimson spatters with a towel, but you've already seen enough to know that consumption has marked her for an early grave, and there isn't a doctor within 500 miles who can do anything meaningful about it. Welcome to the medical realities of frontier brothel life, where your body is simultaneously your most valuable asset and your greatest liability. In an era when germ theory is still considered a radical European notion, and most doctors believe that disease comes from bad air or moral failings, you're navigating health risks that would terrify a modern emergency room physician. The irony isn't lost on you that in a business built around intimate physical contact, basic hygiene knowledge could mean the difference between financial success and literal death. The disease lottery starts every time you entertain a customer, because in 1882, sexually transmitted infections aren't just common, they're practically inevitable. Syphilis, gonorrhea, and what polite society calls social diseases spread through frontier communities like wildfire through dry grass. The symptoms might not appear for weeks or months, which means you could be infected long before you realize anything is wrong, and by then you've potentially passed it along to dozens of other people. Your medical education consists entirely of whispered conversations between experienced girls who've learned to recognize danger signs through brutal trial and error. Big nose. Kate knows that certain types of sores mean immediate quarantine from customers until they heal, if they heal. Sarah can spot the early signs of the French disease in customers and knows to charge extra for the increased risk, though she admits the extra money won't help much if you actually catch it. Mercury treatments represent the pinnacle of frontier medical sophistication, which should tell you everything you need to know about your healthcare options. Dr. Holliday, no relation to the famous gunfighter despite his claims, prescribes mercury pills, mercury ointments, and mercury injections for everything from syphilis to headaches. The fact that mercury poisoning causes symptoms remarkably similar to the diseases it's supposed to cure seems to escape his medical training entirely. The cure is worse than the disease, Big Nose Kate mutters while showing you the tremors in her hands from her last round of mercury treatments. But what choice do we have? You can't work if you're obviously sick, and you can't eat if you don't work. It's the kind of circular logic that defines most aspects of your new life. Every solution creates new problems, and every problem requires solutions you can barely afford. Pregnancy represents a different kind of death sentence, though one that arrives more slowly and with greater suffering. There are no reliable contraceptive methods available beyond what frontier women call careful timing and hopeful prayers, neither of which offer much protection against the inevitable biological consequences of your profession. When prevention fails, your options range from dangerous to deadly, with no safe choices anywhere on the spectrum. Some girls swear by douching with vinegar, lye, or other caustic solutions that probably do more harm than good. Others rely on herbal remedies passed down through whispered conversations, pennyroyal tea, ergot preparations, and various concoctions that might prevent pregnancy or might just poison you slowly. The lucky ones find sympathetic midwives who know techniques for bringing on the courses, though such services cost more than most girls earn in a month and carry risks that make Russian roulette seem like a sensible game. Historians still argue whether frontier abortion rates were higher among prostitutes than among married women, but from your perspective, the statistics matter less than the reality. Becoming pregnant in your profession means facing months of reduced earning potential followed by either death in childbirth or the impossible challenge of raising a child in a brothel. Neither option leads anywhere you want to go. The primitive medical care available in Deadwood operates on principles that would be laughable if they weren't literally matters of life and death. Dr. Holliday's medical bag contains laudanum for pain, whiskey for antiseptic, and a bone saw for emergencies. His surgical techniques consist mainly of cut it out and hope for the best, while his diagnostic methods rely heavily on examining your tongue and checking your pulse. Anesthesia means drinking enough whiskey to pass out, assuming you can afford that much whiskey. Childbirth, when it happens, takes place in conditions that would horrify any modern medical professional. No sterile instruments, no understanding of infection control, and no pain management beyond alcohol and opium. Women die regularly from complications that could be easily prevented with basic modern medical knowledge, and the ones who survive often face lifelong health problems that make continuing to work nearly impossible. But here's where the bonds between working girls become literally life-saving. You learn to depend on each other for the medical care that society refuses to provide. Mary knows how to stitch cuts that don't require a doctor's attention. Sarah can identify dangerous customers by subtle signs that might indicate venereal disease. Big nose. Kate maintains a collection of herbal remedies that sometimes work better than anything Dr. Holliday prescribes. These informal medical networks operate like underground railroads of health information, passing knowledge from veteran workers to newcomers through a combination of practical demonstration and hushed conversations. You learn which symptoms require immediate attention and which ones can be treated with home remedies. You discover that certain customers carry diseases and should be avoided regardless of how much money they're offering. Most importantly, you develop the kind of mutual support system that can mean the difference between surviving an illness and dying alone in a rented room. The alliance building extends far beyond medical emergencies into a complex web of relationships that provide both practical benefits and emotional survival. Your fellow workers become your early warning system for dangerous customers, your financial advisors during slow periods, and your emotional support when the weight of this lifestyle threatens to crush your spirit entirely. Take Big Nose Kate's relationship with the bartender downstairs, a weathered man named Murphy who's worked in frontier saloons since before the Civil War. Murphy knows which customers have money and which ones are nursing their last dime through an evening of cheap whiskey. He can spot troublemakers before they start trouble and has perfected the art of cutting off drinks just before customers become violent. In exchange for information and occasional protection, Kate shares a percentage of her earnings and provides Murphy with companionship that stays strictly professional. Your survival depends on cultivating similar relationships throughout Deadwood's interconnected business community. The general store owner extends credit to working girls because he knows they're reliable customers who eventually pay their bills. The telegraph operator occasionally delays messages about wanted fugitives if those fugitives happen to be regular customers at local brothels. Even the sheriff maintains an unofficial understanding with madams like Dora. He doesn't harass the girls unnecessarily, and they provide information about criminal activities they observe during their work. These alliances require careful maintenance and constant negotiation. You can't appear too friendly with law enforcement without losing credibility with customers who might be operating outside the law themselves. You can't seem too cozy with criminal elements without attracting unwanted attention from authorities. The balance requires diplomatic skills that would serve you well in international politics, if international politics involved this much corset wearing and whiskey serving. Regular customers become crucial allies in ways that extend far beyond simple business transactions. A mining foreman who visits you weekly might warn you about dangerous new arrivals in town. A traveling salesman could provide information about economic conditions in other territories that might affect local business. A cattle drive boss might offer protection during his stay in town in exchange for exclusive access to your time and attention. But the most important alliances are with other working girls, because they're the only people who truly understand the daily realities of your existence. When Mary starts showing advanced symptoms of consumption, you and Sarah take turns covering her customers and sharing your earnings to keep her fed and housed. When a customer tries to cheat Sarah out of payment, you and Kate provide testimony that helps Dora ban him from the establishment permanently. These relationships operate under an unspoken code that values loyalty above individual profit. You don't steal another girl's regular customers even when you're having a slow week financially. You don't reveal personal information that a colleague shares during vulnerable moments. Most importantly, you present a united front when dealing with customers, law enforcement, or anyone else who might threaten the delicate ecosystem that keeps you all alive and working. The emotional support aspects of these friendships can't be quantified in dollars, but they're absolutely essential for psychological survival. When you're having the kind of night where every customer seems determined to remind you how society views your choices, Mary's gentle humor and Sarah's fierce loyalty can restore your sense of human dignity. When you're lying awake at 3 a.m, wondering how your life led you to this moment, knowing that other women are lying in similar rooms having similar thoughts makes the isolation bearable. Some evenings, after the last customer has left and the downstairs piano has fallen silent, you and the other girls gather in someone's room to share stories, gossip, and the kind of honest conversation that's impossible during working hours. These moments of genuine human connection become the emotional fuel that keeps you functioning through days that would otherwise crush your spirit entirely. The reality is that survival in this business requires building a chosen family from the other women who share your circumstances, because your biological family has likely disowned you, and respectable society offers nothing but judgment and condemnation. These relationships become your safety net, your support system, and your reminder that despite what the world tells you, you're still a human being deserving of friendship, loyalty, and basic human dignity. As you lie in your narrow bed at dawn, listening to the sounds of other girls settling in for their few hours of rest, you realize that these alliances aren't just about surviving the immediate dangers of frontier brothel work. They're about maintaining your humanity in circumstances designed to strip it away, one customer at a time. The mason jar buried beneath your floorboards contains your most precious possession, $17.38 in mixed coins and crumpled bills, each piece representing hours of smile until your face hurts work and careful financial maneuvering that would impress a Wall Street banker. You count this treasure every morning before dawn, when the other girls are still sleeping off their exhaustion, and the building creaks with the kind of silence that only comes after a long night of profitable deception. $17 might not sound like much, but in 1882 it represents genuine escape money, enough to buy a train ticket to San Francisco, with a little left over for meals during the journey. The problem, of course, is that your expenses seem designed by some malevolent accountant to ensure that every dollar you save gets devoured by the endless hunger of daily survival. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a massive hole in the bottom, except the bucket is your life and the hole keeps getting bigger. Your financial education began the hard way, by watching other girls make expensive mistakes that trapped them deeper in debt to Madame Dora's operation. Take poor Mary, who made the rookie error of buying a fancy dress on credit during her second week, thinking it would attract higher-paying customers. The dress did attract attention, but the weekly payments to Dora meant Mary was actually earning less money despite working longer hours. By the time she paid off that blue silk gown, it was already showing wear from the kind of use that fancy dresses aren't designed to withstand. The economics of frontier brothel work operate on principles that would baffle legitimate economists and fascinate criminal masterminds. Every aspect of your existence carries a price tag, from the soap you use to wash your face to the candles that light your room during evening hours. Dora maintains a running tab for each girl that includes not just obvious expenses like room and board, but also mysterious charges for house maintenance, protection fees, and something called administrative costs that seem to multiply whenever your savings account starts looking too healthy. You've learned to track these expenses with the dedication of a railroad bookkeeper, noting every charge in a small notebook you keep hidden behind your washstand. Soap, 3 cents, candles, 2 cents each, laundry, 15 cents per week, meals, 50 cents per day, though you've discovered you can survive on less by occasionally skipping dinner or sharing portions with other girls. The mathematics of poverty require constant calculation and creative problem solving that turns every purchase into a strategic decision. The unofficial economy operating within Dora's establishment offers opportunities for entrepreneurial women who understand how to work the system without getting caught. Some girls supplement their income by doing laundry for customers who've been wearing the same shirt for weeks. Others provide basic tailoring services, mending torn clothes, and sewing on buttons for men who've been living rough on cattle drives or in mining camps. Big Nose Kate runs an informal banking service, lending small amounts to girls who are short on room rent in exchange for modest interest payments. Your own side business develops almost accidentally when you realize that your penmanship, a skill learned during your brief stint as a teacher back east, represents a valuable currency in a town where literacy rates hover somewhere between dismal and non-existent. Cowboys who can't write their own names need help composing letters to sweethearts back home. Miners who've struck modest veins want assistance drafting business correspondence to potential investors. Even some of your fellow working girls pay you small amounts to help them write letters to family members who don't know how they're currently earning their living. The letter writing service generates an additional $2 to $3 per week, money that goes directly into your escape fund because Dora doesn't know about it and therefore can't claim her percentage. You charge 25 cents for simple personal letters, 50 cents for business correspondence, and a full $1 for anything that requires legal language or complex financial terms. It's steady income that doesn't require removing your clothes or pretending to enjoy the company of men who smell like they haven't bathed since the previous calendar year. Saving money in a frontier brothel requires the kind of creative accounting normally associated with criminal enterprises or government budgets. You learn to buy essentials during end-of-month sales when local merchants are desperate to clear inventory. You discover which customers tip generously and which ones barely pay the basic rates, allowing you to prioritize your time and energy accordingly. Most importantly, you master the art of living below your means in an environment where every comfort costs extra and every luxury represents a potential trap. The clothing economy presents particular challenges because your appearance directly affects your earning potential, but every dress, pair of stockings, or bottle of rouge represents money that could otherwise go toward your freedom fund. You learn to maintain your existing wardrobe with religious dedication, mending small tears before they become major repairs, and rotating outfits to minimize wear. When you absolutely must buy something new, you shop strategically, looking for pieces that can serve multiple purposes or complement existing items in your limited wardrobe. Some girls supplement their wardrobes through what might charitably be called customer gifts, items left behind by men who were too drunk to remember what they brought or too eager to leave quickly to collect their belongings. These forgotten treasures include everything from silk handkerchiefs to silver pocket watches, though the really valuable items usually get claimed by Dora as house fees before regular workers can benefit from them. The psychological aspects of saving money in this environment require mental discipline that would challenge a monastery monk. Every dollar in your escape fund represents hope, but also the constant temptation to spend it on immediate comforts that would make your daily existence more bearable. When you're working with a customer who hasn't bathed in weeks and your room smells like a combination of old socks and bad decisions, spending a quarter on decent soap seems like a necessity rather than a luxury. You develop elaborate mental tricks to resist these temptations. The money in your jar isn't just $17.38, it's a train ticket to California. It's a small room in San Francisco where you can sleep until noon without owing anyone money for the privilege. It's the possibility of starting over in a place where nobody knows your current profession or cares about your past choices. These fantasies become more valuable than the actual money because they provide the emotional fuel needed to keep saving when every instinct tells you to spend. The investment strategies available to working girls in 1882 would make modern financial advisors weep with frustration. Banks won't open accounts for soiled doves, even when those doves have more ready cash than half the respectable businessmen in town. Safety deposit boxes don't exist, and hiding money in your room means risking theft from customers, colleagues, or cleaning staff. Most girls resort to creative hiding places that range from ingenious to desperate, sewn into mattress seams, buried in small jars, or hidden inside hollowed-out book covers. Historians still argue whether frontier prostitutes actually managed to accumulate significant savings, or if the economic structure of brothel work made upward mobility nearly impossible. But your daily experience suggests the truth lies somewhere between optimistic dreams and harsh reality. A few girls do manage to save enough money to escape, though their success stories often become cautionary tales about different kinds of problems that await women with questionable pasts in supposedly respectable society. The success stories circulate through the informal networks of working girls like modern urban legends. There's supposedly a woman who saved enough money to open her own dress shop in Denver, though nobody can agree on her name or provide specifics about her transformation. Another tale involves a girl who married a wealthy rancher and now lives in a mansion outside Cheyenne, conveniently forgetting to mention her previous profession to her new husband in his social circle. But for every inspiring escape story, there are dozens of cautionary tales about women who thought they had enough money to start over, only to discover that society doesn't easily forgive or forget. Former working girls find themselves excluded from respectable employment, shunned by church communities, and viewed with suspicion by other women who fear their husbands might be attracted to someone with experience. The financial freedom you're working toward might just lead to a different kind of prison, one with better wallpaper but equally restrictive social bars. The daily discipline required to maintain your savings plan becomes a form of meditation that keeps you focused on long-term goals when short-term pleasures beckon constantly. Every morning, you remind yourself why you're putting coins in that mason jar instead of buying better food, warmer clothes, or stronger whiskey to numb the emotional toll of your work. Every evening, you calculate how much closer you are to your escape target and how much longer you'll need to maintain this existence. The target amount keeps changing as you learn more about the real costs of starting over. Train tickets cost more than you initially calculated. Respectable lodging in civilized cities requires references that you don't have and deposits that eat into your savings before you've even begun establishing a new life. Most discouraging of all, you're starting to realize that money alone won't be enough to buy acceptance in the kind of society you dream of joining. Still, you keep saving because the alternative, accepting that this life is permanent, represents a form of spiritual death that you're not ready to embrace. The money in your jar represents more than financial security. It represents the belief that you still have choices, that your current circumstances don't define your permanent identity, and that somewhere in the vast territories of the American West, There's a place where you can start over with a clean slate. As you count your savings in the pre-dawn darkness, listening to the familiar sounds of other girls settling into their brief rest periods, you realize that every coin represents a small victory against the circumstances that brought you here. Whether you'll ever accumulate enough money to actually escape, or whether escape will prove to be just another form of beautiful illusion, remains to be seen. But for now, the act of saving itself provides a sense of purpose that makes the daily indignities bearable and the impossible dreams feel slightly less impossible. The $17.38 might not be enough to guarantee your freedom, but it's enough to keep hope alive for another day. And in Deadwood, South Dakota in 1882, hope is the most valuable currency a working girl can accumulate. And now, as the first pale hints of dawn begin to soften the harsh edges of Deadwood's wooden storefronts, you can finally let your shoulders relax and allow that carefully maintained smile to fade into something more genuine and peaceful. The weight of the corset that has held you upright through another long night can be loosened. The pins can be pulled from your elaborately arranged hair, and for these precious few hours before the cycle begins again, you can simply exist without performance or pretense. The mason jar beneath your floorboards holds not just $17.38, but 17 small victories against circumstances that once seemed insurmountable. Each coin represents a moment when you chose hope over despair, determination over surrender, and the belief that tomorrow might offer possibilities that today has not yet revealed. The other girls are settling into their own brief periods of rest, and the building gradually fills with the quiet sounds of women who have survived another night through courage, cleverness, and an unbreakable commitment to their own survival. Perhaps Mary's cough will improve with the warmer weather that's surely coming. Perhaps Sarah will save enough money to visit her sister in Oregon. Perhaps Big-Nose Kate will find the kind of love that doesn't require negotiation or payment. And perhaps you will count your coins one morning and realize that you finally have enough to buy that train ticket to somewhere new, somewhere kinder, somewhere that offers second chances to women who have learned that strength often comes disguised as compromise. The frontier wind that rattles your window carries with it the promise of vast territories still unexplored, cities not yet built, and stories not yet written. Your own story is far from finished, and as sleep finally claims you in this narrow bed in this temporary place, you can rest in the knowledge that you have survived, you have endured, and you have kept alive the dreams that sustain hope even in the darkest of circumstances. Close your eyes now and let the sounds of history fade into peaceful silence. Sweet dreams.